If you were to ask me, Steve, what's your favorite movie? I'd have a hard time giving you an answer. Chinatown, The Shining, RoboCop, and White Chicks are some of my favorite movies, but they're from such different genres with different moods and they have different things to say. It's hard to pick a definitive best. When it comes to snacks, I don't have that problem. There's one that's so completely tasty that it makes all the others pale in comparison. If you made me choose between a life with just this snack and a life with all the other snacks, I'd pick the life with just this snack, and it's not even a competition. It's that good. I am, of course, talking about the humble potato chip. Before we get into the history of the potato chip, we have to get into the history of the potato. It's a root vegetable from the nightshade family. Like its cousins, the tomato and the pepper, it comes from the New World. It would have first been domesticated by farmers in what's now Bolivia and Peru, although there's no record of them having made any potato chips. The potato would have been brought to Europe sometime after contact in the 16th century. The earliest recipe for what could be considered potato chips comes from the Cook's Oracle, a cookbook by William Kitchener, first published in 1817. It was a bestseller in both the US and the UK, so this would have been prominent. Here's the recipe. Potatoes fried in slices or shavings, as seen in the Second American edition from 1822. It's pretty simple, as you can see. Cut potatoes into quarter-inch rondelles, dry them, and fry them in lard or drippings. Some of you might be thinking, what about George Crumb? Didn't he invent the potato chip? It's a legendary story set in a fancy restaurant in Saratoga Springs, New York. It begins with a diner, usually identified as none other than Cornelius Vanderbilt, who, unhappy with his French fries, asks for a new order that are to be made thinner. The cook, George Crumb, in an apparent act of malice, slices the potatoes paper thin, fries them to a crisp, and adds a generous heaping of salt. To the surprise of everybody, it's a big hit with the diner. It's a great story, but it supposedly happened in the 1850s, 30 years after the Cook's Oracle was published. Further, Crumb himself never claimed to have invented the chip, while his sister, Catherine Wicks, was identified as the alleged inventor in her obituary. Whoever invented the Saratoga chip deserves a lot of credit. It's a lot closer to a modern chip than Kitchener's quarter-inch version was. In 1895, William Tappenden of Cleveland, Ohio, would begin making his own Saratoga chips, which he sold commercially. Made industrially and delivered in barrels to local grocery stores, you no longer needed to visit Crumb's fancy and expensive restaurant to enjoy a Saratoga chip. You could have them at home. In the mid-1920s, Laura Scudder began making chips in Monterey Park, California. Acknowledging the flaws of selling chips in barrels, she created bags, first using wax paper and later cellophane. Well ahead of her time, her bags even included a freshness date. Chips would remain unseasoned until 1954, when Irish snack company Tayto would introduce the world's first seasoned chip, cheese and onion. It was the creation of Joe Spud Murphy and Seamus Burke, who created an innovative technique to apply the seasoning. Chip companies the world over sought to license the technique. Tayto would follow up cheese and onion with the second flavor, salt and vinegar. Two classic flavors right out of the hopper. There's a lot more that could be said about chips. Who introduced the crinkle cut? What's the difference between regular and kettle cooked? Just what is a potato crisp anyway, and who are they trying to fool by pumping the bags full of air? But those are questions for another day. Thanks for watching Steve's Snack Shack. I'm Steve Saarinen.